All right, so everybody, welcome to C2 Debate, okay? Just really quickly, raise your hand if you have taught any of the debate classes for Chungdom. Has anyone ever taught any of the debate classes? All right, oh, we got a couple. So Leslie, you taught some of the D courses and stuff like that? Fantastic. Olivia also? All right. Have you guys taught the C2 debate class? Yes. All right. So fantastic. So you guys know that there are some differences and modifications from the debate class, as well as the master's debate class. So I'm going to be going over the general idea of the program. Then I'm going to jump into some of the SMART textbook. Then I'm going to provide everyone some tips and tricks. Okay. Even if you don't have debate experience with Chungdam, has anybody ever taught or participated in any type of formal debate, maybe in college or high school or when you were younger? Can I get a hands up? All right, Marilyn. All right, we got a few people. All right, fantastic. So you guys know that the debate class is a lot of fun. This is a class that students are really going to get into, okay? For the debate class, these are typically your day 2 class. So they're usually paired up with your skill-based class. So they're going to be doing C1, which is like IBT TOEFL, skill-based reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And then C2 class, whether or not C2D or C2, this is the fun class. This is the output class. This is the creative class, okay? You're the good teacher. C1 is the bad teacher, okay? We love Olivia. We hate whoever C1 teacher is. Oh, they're horrible, okay? So just remember that when you're doing this class, we want to have a lot of fun. We want to have a lot of output, and I'll show you guys how we're going to get that done, okay? All right, so here, if you look at the objectives are very similar to what we had also in C2 program, okay? So number 1 is we're going to look at critical thinking and we're going to analyze multiple perspectives, right? So if you took the C2 low class, right, or you trained in C2 low, you're gonna have something like tiger moms, right? And there's good reasons why tiger moms and bad reasons, right? Very similar with a debate, right? So also with the program, there's going to be multiple perspectives. There are some differences though, okay? Part 2, obviously, we're going to build creative thinking, and it's going to be project-based learning, group thinking, group working. Okay. Number 3 is we will enhance writing and speaking skills, okay, through debates and speeches. I think one thing that a lot of people miss out on when they're doing these types of classes is the writing skills, right? So no, they're not going to be writing necessarily an academic essay, but they do have to write scripts, they have to write speeches, right? And all these things are incorporated when you're creating your output and your project. So something to keep in mind. Got a few more people, hold on. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go over a basic class structure, the components, and basically it's all pretty much similar for all levels. There's really just one little difference from like the Eagle to Albatross or Alba and Albatross Plus, and it's just like the labeling of something, so it's not really a big deal. However, I recommend everyone look at the segment guides, right? The segment guides have everything for you. I'm not going to go through these necessarily and read them all over for you. That is on you to do on your own. When you do this, you should be able to access it through the FTP, or maybe your FM or BM or manager has access on some type of drive or something like that. So you go, if you have any issues or problems, I'll give you my email at the end and you can just email me and I'll be happy to provide you with whatever resources you might need, okay? So for this class, I'm sorry, we got more people coming in. For this class, it runs a little bit differently, okay? So a lot of people, you think, oh, well, it's going to be just debates every day. It is absolutely not debates every day, which is kind of bad because like it'd be great to have a debate every day, but we also need to give them the fundamental skills and we will need to build that up, okay? So just like I said, the objective is writing and debating, right? So here, each level, so Eagle, Alba, and Albatross Plus, they go into 3 units, okay? 3 lessons per unit. Okay, so lesson 1, unit 1, lesson 2, unit 1, lesson 3, unit 1. Okay, so each one of these units will have a general topic. Okay, so that's kind of good because you're going to be able to build up on them throughout the 3 lessons. So the general topics, I'll show you. This would be on like basically the first page of every smart book. So if you look here, the topics are pretty general, right? So for lesson unit 1, it's all based on education for Eagle, right? So lesson 1, we're going to talk about school uniforms. Lesson 2, we're going to talk about school discipline. Lesson 3, we're going to talk about school exams. Then unit 2 will all be about all technology, right? So video games, smart devices, social networking. Then so forth. Level 4 is along crime. Level 5 is national politics. and I'm sorry, unit 5, and unit 3 is culture, okay? So here, for each unit, you'll have a general topic, and then you'll have 3 subjects that you'll be looking at for the actual whole program, okay? The same thing happens for all the levels. This is just another example. It just looks a little bit differently. But here, this one's Albatross Plus. So the first one is science and technology. Then unit 2 is education and culture. Unit 3 is education and culture again, morals and international politics, okay? So one thing to keep in mind is that you're going to be building these up throughout the term, right? So when you're thinking of your prep and you're thinking of your videos, you do want to maybe span it out a little, okay? Now, hold on. Oops. When you get into the lesson, so I'm going to go through the components. I'm going to be jumping back and forth from like the book and my slides, okay? So here, okay, it's a little bit strange. I'm actually going to go to Unit 1, Lesson 2, okay? So here, if you look at Unit 1, Lesson 2, okay, this page, the discovery, okay, it's called the discovery page. This is actually, students are supposed to be doing this for homework, okay? So if you look, it says, before you come to class, okay? So on lesson 1, you need to tell them, hey, you need to go to page 2, right? And page 3 to do your homework. So here, what it's doing is just giving them an introduction to the perspectives, right? That they're going to focus on for the class. So that's something that's just a little bit different because lesson 1 does not have that, all right? Because obviously they didn't do their homework. It's only the first lesson, okay? So here, then same thing here, there is a video and they just have to answer these really simple questions and write some basic notes, okay? Talk to your FM whether or not they're actually going to have access to that. They should have access to the smart textbook when they go home and stuff. So you can tell them to write it down in their notebook or you can have them write it down on paper. I don't know if it's going to be, actually, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be like how we do those perspective essays where it pulls from their homework. So therefore, the only way you'll be able to check or see is if they actually write it down or if they have something like to show you, okay? So here there is also a video that they can also watch. It's a Cheongdam creative video. It basically goes over the perspectives and it goes over the whole lesson.
Should we continue?
Okay, so that's just for, okay, once we start lesson 2, because it would be like, hey, that's your homework. In lesson 1 though, okay, you should go over it with them, okay? So here, because it's lesson 1 and you can let them know, oh, next week you need to go to lesson 2 and you need to watch this video on your own. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's just a little bit confusing for some people sometimes. Okay, so here, so what is the basic Discovery 1 and Discovery 2? So basically all it is introduction to key terms related to the topic. Now you can still review those and you can still go over them. You should for the next lesson, even though they did it for homework, because they still might not understand. Just like you do in the C1 program, you can add media cards. So here, I think this one is Eagle, right? Some keywords that we're going to be going over to help them understand the overall concept and perspectives. We have flipped classroom, breaking barriers, self-directed learning, right? Gadgets and gizmos. These are just some general vocabulary they're going to need to know for the lesson coming up, okay? Moving on. Okay, so again, remember that these will be for homework pages 2 and 3 on the next lesson. So you're going to remind them, hey, go to unit 1, lesson 2, look at page 2, and look at page 3. Watch the video and try to write down some information about the key terms and learn those. So when they come in, hopefully they can actually give you some examples or maybe explain it to you, okay? So then after that, okay, here, they're going to give you just basically a big overview of what the units will be about or what the lesson will be about. Okay, so if you remember, like unit 1 was all about school or education. So here, this is lesson 1, 2, and 3. Okay, for the debate class, okay, for this C2 debate, they actually give you 3 perspectives. Okay, now this is where personally, especially on the days when I'm doing a debate, okay? So every third lesson is the debate. So lesson 3 is your actual debate lesson. Lesson 1 is like a writing and lesson 2 is like a speech, okay? But lesson 3, especially, I find it unnecessary to give usually the third perspective or the third argument. Instead, usually what I'll do is I'll only focus on 2 arguments and I'll use that additional time for research, feedback, and running the actual debate. Especially at the beginning of the term for your students who are maybe new to debate or have no experience in it, you're going to want to give them that extra time and that extra feedback. Okay, so here, just keep that in mind. Also, the third one is kind of always like a gimme, I think. Like, so for example, it's like, hey, which school uniform policy do you think is better? Relaxed dress code or strict dress code? And then here, just like these ones are always like, oh, well, everyone can do it, or anyone, like you get to choose. I just find the third ones don't really initiate a debate as much. It's better to have them on, clear stances or clear sides, right? When they're going to argue and they're going to create their arguments and stuff. So that's just another thing I do with my classes sometimes. I find I can use that time also to help develop the project, as well as, give feedback and stuff like that. Okay. So once you get a basic overview, you're going to get into some of the basic components. One of the components that you're going to get is the rhetorical device, or some type of argumentation or debate skill. Okay. Here, there is the rhetorical devices. For the rhetorical devices, it always introduces one and it reviews one. Okay, so it'll review, like lesson 2 will review lessons 1. Oh, let's look back and remember what we did, right, in lesson 1's rhetorical device, and then it will introduce a new rhetorical device. So again, for example, it's a little bit easier, like I said, to go into lesson 2 to kind of give you an example. Okay. Okay, so here, for example, if you see right here, it says, wrong button. It says here, let's review last class's rhetorical device. Okay, so this is what they learned last week. So you're going to review it so you can elicit for them, see if they remember it, right? Repetition is key. And then you'll introduce the new rhetorical device, okay, which is composition. So it's going to just continue to do that for all 3 lessons, okay? So just keep that in mind. There is a repetition. So if they don't get it the first time, don't worry about it so much. Also, if you're teaching this throughout your whole branch, and students are in Eagle, Alba, and Albatross Plus, they will be able to, they'll learn these over and over again, right? So don't worry about like having them learn it 100%, especially at Eagle. You'll repeat it again in lesson 2. You'll repeat it again, right, as they move up through the levels, okay? All right. So these are the rhetorical devices, and then argumentation also they'll teach you. So these are basic, I would say very basic debate skills that you're going to learn through the lessons, and how to form logical arguments, how to form opinions and stuff like that. For teachers, I strongly recommend that you do some additional research on debates, and you do additional research on arguments and how to help your students create those as you go. Overall, though, when you're forming arguments or you're making opinions, it's pretty much the same as like an opinion essay or an academic essay, right? That we practiced and they have done in IBT TOEFL, and that they're doing in their C1 class, right? So here, like, I believe, students shouldn't wear uniforms, first of all, transition words, hooks, and stuff like that. So don't worry too much about it if you're not like 100% proficient. Just think about it in that way, okay? So here, now the perspective, there's going to be like these short exercises, which is kind of nice because we don't have to find the videos, right? So you don't have to go on YouTube and find a video. There are actually videos embedded within the program. That's actually one thing that a lot of people like about the program, is that, oh, okay, great. I have some media, I have some images. However, one thing to keep in mind is the media you're playing is the exact same media pretty much as their homework. Okay. There are some additional statistics sometimes and information, but overall, it's going to be the same thing. So again, examples, right? So, oops, where is it? That's not it. Let me go C2 Eagle. Let's try this one. So, okay, school discipline, da, 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 da. That's all right. So if I play this video.
Each form of discipline comes with its share of criticism. Detention requires a student to spend extra time after school hours. However, does it actually affect the behavior of the student? A study done by the Journal of Abnormal Child Psychology found detention did not deter bad behavior, and it made no difference in the actions of students who had detention once or twice. In the United States alone, suspensions kept 2 million students out of class.
All right, so if you look, this video is about 1 minute, okay? It's only about 1 minute. It's talking about school detention. Now, if I go back to the homework video, page 2, sorry, page 3, the discovery page, it'll be the same video. So if this video is about 3 minutes, so it's all the parts put together.
Ever since the first public school opened, there has been a system of discipline in place. This system of discipline helps maintain the proper school environment so that every student has the opportunity to receive a proper education. The three main types are exclusion, positive reinforcement, and corporal punishment. Exclusion, such as detention, suspension, and expulsion, basically isolates the misbehaving students from others. Positive reinforcement, such as social, token, and tangible reinforcement, encourages good behavior by rewarding the student. Corporal punishment physically punishes a student for bad behavior. So, what is the best way to discipline students to help them with their educational development? Each form of discipline comes with its share of criticism. Detention requires a student to spend extra
So here, this is the same video now, okay? So that they just cut this part out. So here,
time after school hours. However, does it actually affect the behavior of the student? A study done by the Journal of Abnormal Child Psychology found detention did not deter bad behavior.
okay, so here, this is the exact same clip. So basically what I'm saying here is if your students aren't doing the video homework, then don't worry about it too much. You're going to review it throughout the perspectives as you go through. In addition, there is no, like, you can play the video, but you don't really have to have them like understand everything right away. So this is a good way if they aren't doing their homework, or if you aren't assigning that homework for page 2 and page 3, you can just play the video and just have them try to comprehend as much as possible, have a short discussion, and don't worry about it. You'll go through those sections of the videos again in the actual perspective. So don't go all crazy about this. Like, oh, what was the abnormal psychology? What was the statistic? What was the number? How much was it? Everyone understand that, right? Because you're going to do it later on, okay? All right, so here, and that's sometimes I see a lot of teachers, especially new teachers to the program, they'll go really heavy on this and forget, one, that it was assigned as homework, or two, that we're going to go over it again later on in the lesson, okay? So for example, I don't know which one of this was, right? So here, it was probably the first one actually, exclusion or something, right? And then there is like short questions to answer about that one section of the video, okay? So here, what is detention, right? What did the Journal of Abnormal Psychology conclude about detention, so forth and so forth. However, if they did their homework and they have a good set of notes, this should actually be pretty easy for them. They should be able to answer all questions pretty quickly, okay? And then all 3 sections are done. Okay. Okay. And then you'll get to the rhetorical project. But before I get to that, depending on what lesson you're doing, okay, depending on what lesson you're doing, there's something called like the overview, or here it's called like the debate, or points and points for and points for against. Okay. When you get this section, okay, in your perspective frames, these are really good. I think opportunities to introduce specific debate skills that aren't necessarily introduced. So for example, in a debate, there's something called like formal language, right? So whenever a speaker starts or whenever a speaker ends, you're supposed to use specific wording, right? So if you know already, right, you should start out with some type of formal language like honorable speaker and fellow debaters. Then you state who you are and what position you are. So honorable speaker, fellow debaters, my name is Peter and I am the deputy prime minister, or I'm the leader of the opposition, so forth and so forth. Then you are going to restate whatever your opinion is, right? We, the government, agree that, you know, corporal punishment is the most effective way. And then you go into your reasons or your arguments. So typically what I'll do here, because they already have, like, they're making mini arguments, right? So they watch the video, they can literally steal everything from the video, or they can go do their own research, or you can, you know, show another video or media card to help develop their own arguments. But here, basically, I'll have them work on their own, whatever argument is, right? Or details, or facts, whatever it is that they found, right? In a note form, right? And then what I'll do is I'll also introduce some basic debate formalities, right? So for example, especially on the first week or first lessons, I'll say, okay, guys, just so you know, whenever you start, you should always say honorable speaker and fellow debaters. And whenever you end, you should always say, I yield my time. So then they go through, they introduce themselves, they start off with the formal language. And that way, when you get to lesson 3, those parts are a little bit already more ingrained in the students and they already understand that. In addition, you could think of them as kind of like mini presentations or mini speeches. So they'll stand up, they'll speak in, it takes a while for them to get to the front. I usually just tell them to stand up in front of their desks, right? Or behind their desk, and they'll just say, honorable speaker and fellow debaters, my name is Peter. I'm acting as the deputy prime minister, right? And also depending on the level of students and depending on the level of experience that they have, some students might already be familiar with it. You could have them go first as an example, and then other students who are maybe newer will understand how they should formulate and speak appropriately during the debate. Okay. I like these parts here. I think they're a lot of fun. You can also use them for rebuttals and POIs and so forth, and start creating engagement between the students. So for example, later on in the lesson, right? So let's say someone did an argument and they had a fact, they were on the government side. I would then say, oh, I would ask an individual student, can you rebut that, right? Or can you respond to that? So let's just say there's another student. So they'll say, right, oh, as the first speaker spoke, or as this speaker spoke, you can give them rules, right? They said that it is effective because blah, 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 blah. However, I disagree. And then they can give a reason. Now I will begin my argument. So they also get into that full process of understanding how to rebut a speaker and how to introduce their argument in a formal way. Does that make sense? Okay. Here, also, for those of you who have done debate or have done the master's classes, you know that there's like a whole worksheet and PDF for how to start debates and how to starting language and ending language. I don't want to go into it like way too much because that's just going to take forever. But for those people who are new, access the FTP. You can go into the Master's D program, the Master's Debate program, and you can download this PDF that has all the proper phrasing and sentence structures that you can use. You can also Google it and look for it also, and the internet has it all over. Okay. All right. So again, I think this is a lot of fun to do. There's a lot of little mini projects and stuff like that that you can do for this section. And again, this is also where I'm going to definitely start introducing a lot of the debate components. Okay. Now, another thing that a lot of the programs will have is this research idea or the research component. Similar, I would say the skills, back in the day, we also did it for C2, but research is really difficult for students, okay? So some things that you're going to want to think about and prepare, right, for the students is how to properly research what it is that they need to find in order to help support their argument. So a good example I always use for C2 is tiger moms, right? So for example, if a student goes on the internet and he searches tigers, right? What is he going to get? He's not going to get the information he wants. He's just going to get animals. He's going to get zoos. He's going to get that, right? Well, what do you need? Oh, you need tiger parenting. Great. So, okay, what do you want to know about tiger parenting? Tiger parenting is beneficial or tiger parenting is harmful. You need to teach them how to do that, okay? If you feel that your students are struggling and having a lot of difficulties with that, something else I also do for the research or to help with the debates is I'll just find an article myself. I'll maybe find 1 or 2 articles that I already know, that I'm familiar with, that have good information to either support or oppose whatever the debate is for that week. Then you can just give both articles, right? Print them out, give both articles to all your students. And then since you already know what the article says, it's a lot easier to elicit the information instead of having 12 students all with 12 different articles going, teacher, what does this mean? Or I don't understand. Can I use this for my argument? Can I have, right? So it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more like condensed instead of having them go research it on their own. So that's just a little tip and trick that I'll do for the research. I do, however, as they progress, want them to start being able to identify and find their own research and not me always printing it out every week. Okay. In addition, there's a lot of good things like on YouTube. Like sometimes there's really great where there's a video and an article. So you can print out the article, right? And they can watch the video and then they can read an article afterwards related to that video. And that way they have it both ways. They have it visually, they have it audibly, they have it, in written form also, okay? All right, so after you do all this, you get to the fun part, okay? The fun part is the rhetorical projects, okay? Now here, the projects is all about applying the knowledge that they've just learned, all the information, all the perspectives, all the statistics, and then create a persuasive project output in either speaking or writing, okay? So again, for lesson 1, okay? It'll always typically be a writing project. Now, even though it's a writing project, I still like to have my students present their writing. I feel like just having them write an essay and nobody listening or nobody sharing, that isn't really as effective, okay? Whether or not your branch allows modifications, you should talk to your FM, you should talk to your BM. But here, I think it's always important for them to output verbally also and share their information so that other students can also see and learn from each other. One thing you can also do if you want is you can find someone's writing who you think did a really good job. Doesn't even have to be like the first student necessarily, but you can use like an old one. So for example, you collect everyone from lesson 1, you save those for lesson 4 for the new writing, right? And basically you'll take an example, maybe take a picture and maybe put one person's writing up. You don't necessarily have to tell who the student is. You can maybe just take their introduction paragraph, maybe one of their reasons, and you can put it up on your TV screen and explain or have students analyze why this is a good argument. How is it effective? What skills did they use or what rhetorical devices did they use for that project, okay? All right, so here, usually there's some type of scenario, just like in V1, right? Where, oh, write a diary, or imagine if you're like a student, right? Something like that. So here, the school has decided to enforce a strict uniform policy, right? Write an open letter to your principal opposing the idea, okay? Here, I don't think they necessarily have to oppose the idea. I would allow them to have either opinion, have their own opinion, right? So like I said, it's very much similar to like an independent essay, an academic essay, where they're going to have their opinion and they're going to express it, okay? Here, oops. Okay. Here, another one is the Board of Education is having a school lunch policy. School lunches can be provided, and they have 3 options: government, individuals, or private companies. Who do you think would be the best to provide the school lunches? What's your reasoning, right? Oh, government should do it. It's their responsibilities. Oh, individuals, because they all have their own likes and dislikes, right? Oh, no, private companies, it'll be delicious. They'll make things like quality and stuff like that, okay? Now, there's other types of writing if you want to make writing a little bit more collaborative. So something I've done in my class that makes it a little bit more fun is I make a newspaper. So I make a template, right, using Google Slides, and then students can create their own newspaper. Here, it could be about school policies. It could be about whatever the topic is that they've learned about, and they can use those statistics and information. Here, in addition to that, I sometimes, because it is just persuasive writing, I'll add other things in there. For example, they can talk about the advertising, maybe something is being sold, all these types of things that can make it a little bit more fun, but it is still a writing-based project, okay? So here, these are just a lot of fun. Your students will have like a great time. Hopefully they'll put your face all over it and make you a bad, bad man, okay? So here, there are other types of writing projects. Also, another one is, I would say, like fantasy writing, where you start off like once upon a time, stuff like that. They can create a story or a narrative that helps support or oppose, right, whatever the position is, right? Something I show is like Kim Jong-un, like, you know, photos of him being like a great, you know, leader and everything like that. And then we got to make a story about how he became the great leader and all that stuff. If you don't know, there's all that stuff like he made the world, and children's will have to read it and stuff like that. So think outside the box for the writing. Don't always just make an academic essay, because that can be a little bit boring for the students, okay? All right. Lesson 2s are typically speeches, okay? Speeches, all right, especially if you have a larger class, right? It can be a little bit difficult if you have a really large class and they write a lot of information. However, typically students actually, I need them to speak longer. So one thing I find with these is you need to give them specific time goals or time limits, right? Especially for like the weaker students, because students will get up and they'll literally speak for 1 minute. I know it takes a long time, but this is also where that writing skill comes in, right? They got to write out their speech. They got to know what they're saying. In addition to speech, right? It's all about mannerisms. It's all about pace. It's all about speed. It's all about style, not just what you say, but how you say it, okay? Here, same idea, depending on what the subject is, right? They'll give a scenario. So your school has decided to reinstate corporal punishment. Yay, right? And then the response, you and your classmates will stage a demonstration protesting, right, the change, right? Here, there will also be what they're called rhetorical devices. These are a bunch of links that are also on the drive. However, and I'll show them later. However, just note that some of the links are just not good anymore. They're like really old links for YouTube or other things. So you can just look for the link, or you can look in Google search or YouTube search one for yourself, but just keep that in mind. Okay. Here, number 2, you are a representative of either a public school or private school speaking on student attendance. Prepare a speech to persuade students to attend your school. Okay. So for the speech, I also like to maybe make some modifications. Sometimes I find it easier, instead of saying students like, here is your opinion, right? Or choose an opinion, because that could be hard, because a lot of the students like, I don't really care about this topic, teacher. Like, I don't really have an opinion. So therefore I don't want to speak, or I can't speak like, logically or passionately about it. So something that I find helpful is put them in a role, right? So create like specific roles, like as a, let's say, something about education, right? They're going to increase tuition, right? So increase tuition at schools. How would a parent think about this? How would a teacher think about this? How would your principal think about this, right? Obviously, they would have different perspectives. So you can put them into little roles and have them do that also. If you have larger classes and they're really motivated and they're really working hard, you could also put them into groups to do parts of the speech together. However, I do prefer usually to have them do their whole speech alone, because I want them to do the intro, I want them to do the conclusion, I want them to practice all those parts of it. Even if it is short, I'm okay with that. Okay. Other examples that I might do also for the speech, especially because like a lot of the debate stuff, I might have news stories, right? I might have interviews. I might do stuff like that, depending on what your group is, right? And they can report on maybe whatever the topic is. They can create their own stories, similar to like the newspapers, except it's just verbally stated, okay? You can also have like talk shows where you can have different characters with different perspectives, once again, putting them into a role. So you have the host or the interviewer, right? And then maybe a mother comes on who, is maybe struggling to make payments, or a single mother. And then you have a teacher or a principal or a hagwon owner come on, right? And they're going to debate it out and argue about what they think about maybe increasing tuition for schools, okay? So these are just a lot of different ways that you can do these parts of the project. That way it's not just everyone get up, everyone speak, and then so forth, okay? The last part is lesson 3. Lesson 3 is the debate. This is the fun day. This is the day everyone's been waiting for. Just so you know, I've gotten complaints before from parents. So just a heads up, saying, wait, I thought this was a debate class, but because lesson 1 and lesson 2, you haven't actually done a debate. So there might be complaints. Just let your students know, okay, every lesson 3, we will always have a debate, okay? So just make sure that they know that. That way they don't go home and say like, hey, there was no debate, okay? All right, so here, there will be the motion, right? The motion is always supported by the government or the proposition. The government should pay for college, okay? Good one, I like that one, okay? Here, then you're gonna split them up into teams, okay? And I'm gonna explain a little bit more of the debate stuff and some modifications and changes you can do depending on what the situation is. But here, for the debate, the motion, always remember that the government always supports the motion. Whatever it is, the government is usually either enacting some type of policy, some type of rule, okay? Or they're supporting some type of value or moral, okay? Always think of the government as good people, right? So why do we have government? Government's purpose? Well, basically the idea is that citizens can't manage it on their own individually, okay? So therefore, government takes it upon themselves to make laws and regulations, right? So whenever there's a government, they're always thinking on the government side as, hey, what I'm doing is to help my citizens because they can't do it on their own. Then the opposition is always thinking, no, this is not good government, right? They're taking all our power. This is Kim Jong-un. This is North Korea. They're trying to take away powers that aren't necessarily needed, okay? So that's always basically kind of like the lines that you're going for the government and the opposition, okay? The government is always explaining why this policy is necessary and how this policy will be better than the current status. Opposition is always saying, no, the policy is not necessary. Either A, there's other alternatives, right? Maybe another way we could do it, or B, it's already fine. There is no need. What the government is saying, they're just being little babies about things, okay? So here, always remember that, okay? All right, so again, these are the rhetorical devices. So it has lessons 1 through 11, I think. And then there is like Martin Luther King, I have a dream is I think in every single one. There's a couple of TED Talks. There's also timestamps. Some of like the TED Talks, if you don't know, like they're really long. But again, they're not, some of them aren't even that good, meaning like they're dead. They're like, some of these are from 2005, Steve Jobs Stanford commencement, but you can just Google it and find it on your own. A majority of these are just famous speeches, famous rhetorical devices and stuff like that. Okay. You can also like, I know a lot of like memes now and stuff like that. They're using them too. So I don't know, these kids with their memes, right? You can also do that. Okay. I keep hitting the wrong button. All right, so I'm going to go into the little bit more of the debate and homework in a second. Okay, so here there's something called the critical rebuttal for their homework. Okay, so for their homework, they're going to do something, this critical rebuttal. And basically, this is, like I said, if you remember when I said they're making those arguments and I'd have them see honorable speaker and fellow debaters, right? And then I'd have them respond. That's why they need to learn how to do that, right? Because they actually need to do it for homework. It's lessons 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Okay, so hold on. I'll show you what it is. So this is what they'll do. They'll go home, okay? And basically they're listening, a lot of listening skills. They're listening to somebody's argument, and then their job is to rebut verbally and record it on their iLearning.
Mr. Speaker and fellow debaters, thank you for the opportunity to argue in favor of students wearing uniforms. First, the purpose of school is to educate students. Uniforms help students focus in school, thereby furthering their ability to excel in academia. With uniforms, students will not need to spend excessive time in the morning picking out outfits. They will be able to come to school more rested and ready to focus. Also, in school, students will not have as many distractions because students will be in similar outfits. Second, uniforms prevent bullying. Students wearing different clothes have already caused a tremendous number of bullying cases in the United States. For example, a 10-year-old girl in Raleigh, North Carolina, hung herself because other students tormented her. They teased her about her shoes and clothes. The school administration is considering uniforms to prevent further incidents of bullying. Children cannot help but judge a book by its cover. Often, bullying occurs when a child's clothes appear different or less expensive. Uniforms will allow students to see each other as equals. Finally, uniforms are less expensive. The cost of school supplies is already a huge burden on families. Purchasing lots of different clothes in various styles is unnecessary and frivolous. With uniforms, parents can save money by only buying clothes that children need to school. There will be no pressure to buy the latest trends that some families cannot afford. In conclusion, we have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that students should wear uniforms in school.
Okay, so here she's using like the formal language, honorable speaker and fellow debaters, right? Here the students will have to rebut to that. She's using some rhetorical devices. She's using a little bit of research. It's really basic, but obviously for your students, a lot of them have maybe little to no actual formal debate experience. So this is where you're really setting it up. For those of you who maybe have more debate experience, obviously, you know, that wouldn't be a perfect response necessarily, right? There are some things that are unnecessary sometimes, but I usually just want to start getting them into the repetition of introducing who they are, what their side is, and then what their arguments are, okay? All right, moving right along. So for the C2, so the C2 debate class was made a long time ago, actually. It's a pretty old one, right? But because of that, things have changed. But for the C2 debate, they're using a British parliamentary debate format. It's not horrible. It's not like end of the world. It's not like a big problem. You're welcome if you have little to no experience. So when I first started debate, it was all British Parliament. BP was the thing, right? In Korea. In the past, I would say 5 years, everything has changed. Nobody does BP anymore. right? And all those times I learned BP is just wasted, okay? But basically, the program is based off of British parliamentary style debate. The skills are the same as most debates, but there are differences, right? So for the British parliamentary style debate, there's actually 4 teams. Okay, it's a little bit different. I'm just going to give you a basic overview, but it's actually 4 teams. So there is basically like a government 2 teams and opposition 2 teams. Okay, and then the teams are all arguing on the same side. So the government are all arguing, right, the motion, and the opposition are against the motion. But there's kind of like an opening and a closing team. And actually, when you're grading these, each team gets their own grade, or each team works as together. Okay, sorry. Here it goes back and forth, the roles and stuff. You can Google these. It's not really that hard at all. Everyone will have this on their websites or any debate formats or something like that. Okay. However, BP is no longer used. I recommend, one, if you have no experience with debate, you might as well not waste your time learning BP. Okay. And if you have already experience with AP, then I would modify everything. I would make an AP debate. So whenever, right, there's like every now and then there'll be the picture on the rolls and how it says, I wouldn't do that. I would just say, okay, guys, forget that. I'd use a media card. I'd stick that in. And then I would teach or show AP format debate, because that is what we use. That's what they're going to learn. Those of you who touch the master's level, that's what they're going to be introduced to. However, the skills are very much the same. The rules are very much the same. One of the biggest differences that you're going to get is that last speaker, which is called the reply speaker. Okay, so there is no reply speaker in BP. Okay, that's the only thing that you're going to need to modify or think about, really. Okay. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. The roles are the same. So if you look, Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, DPM, Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Government Whip, Opposition Whip, okay? I'll go back to show you. Here, Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Leader Opposition. And here, there is Government Whip, Opposition Whip, okay? Here, there is no member of the government. Okay. And don't worry about confusing them too much, because the truth is you're going to have to modify things anyways. Okay. The reason is because on an AP debate, okay, there is typically only 3 people per team. Okay. One person, the prime minister or the deputy prime minister, speaks twice. So there's 4 roles, 3 speakers. Okay. The first 2 speakers, usually, honestly, the prime minister will do the the reply also. But okay, I doubt you're just going to have 6 students in your class. Okay. You're probably going to have like 5 students, 10 students, right? Or even 12 students. Or maybe you'll have days if you have a really older class, right, where you're going to have 4 students. So pretty much what I do is, when I do this with larger classes, is I just divide either more arguments, right? So here, for example, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and then I'll take on some of the roles of the BP. So I just call them members of governments or members of opposition. And you could have member 1, member 2, member 3, member 4. You could have member 20, but then you got to come up with 20 arguments though. Okay. So here, that's usually what I'll do when I do that. Also, when I split up the arguments, sometimes because the government's prime minister and the opposition also introduce an argument, I'll say, no, for this, the prime ministers and the leader of oppositions just need to introduce, and then they need to signpost the argument. Signpost meaning just let me know what arguments are coming up. Then we're going to have deputy prime minister. They can do 1 argument. And if you look, there are 2 other arguments that they need to do. So you can have a total of 3 arguments. You can have more, right? So I can then have 2 extra team members per team. Okay. So here, just divide it up any way you can, but those are just simple ways depending on the size of the class. I usually just divide up arguments. That's the easiest way to do it. Okay. All right. Again, this information is also found on the drive, right? Especially in the D program, the debate program, the masters, because that's where they're really teaching Asian parliamentary style debate. Okay. All right. Well, why do we need this? Well, one thing is the Masters debate competition. Yay! Anyone do it? Anyone see it? No? All right. So the Masters debate competition is a huge event. All branches, all locations, Cheongdam. I think we had 79 teams total, something like that, 79 teams, right? They come and we debate each other. So Yongtong versus Suji, Suji versus Socho, right? And it's, a lot of fun. I actually adjudicated it this term, meaning I was the judge for one of the things. The kids worked really hard. We also had teams in there, and they really enjoy it. And it's just a really fun experience. If you've ever done like debate or MUN when you were younger, right? You just nerd out and like, yeah, oh my God, right? And it's a lot of fun. The kids really like it. Here are the motions that we had for this term. Okay, so this house would permit students to take off to focus on their mental health and emotional being, right? Artists and athletes should oblige to uphold their country's reputation, and then artificial intelligence will lead to a large-scale unemployment and greater inequalities. These kids are really good. These are typically our master kids, but it is something that you want to motivate your students for and have them reach for later on, right? This is where they're going to gain their first interest in debate in your class if this is the first time, right? This is where they're going to learn the foundation, right? No, that teacher were like, oh yeah, that teacher inspired me to read or write or love this, right? This is where they're going to start getting that. And then when they get to the master's level, this is where they're going to be like, yeah, man, I want to do that. I want to do the debate. That was so much fun, okay? Because remember, C1 teacher, boring. C2D teacher, yay. Okay. Here is, it was a marketing video, but here you can see some of our students throughout all branches.
Today, we will be debating the issue of new AI technologies and tools.
Everyone in this auditorium knows that AI is the future, but not for our education today.
However, isn't it true that students are misusing AI tools?
How would you suggest an alternative for education?
Protecting human rights is an important thing, not regulating it.
We need athletes to use sporting field as a beneficial tool for them.
Isn't it possible that the purpose of sports can change any time? Sports committees are restricting these acts at the first place.
We have damaged the environment so much, and we don't want to repeat the same mistake again.
Economic development is also a very important problem that we cannot ignore.
It is too late. Side opposition seems to now abandon our planet Earth.
The conversation is from European countries, so let's take a replace having the free in our country.
Our first issue for today's debate was the.
Okay, so here they're on fire. These guys are so serious, and it's crazy, especially if you do join. It's a lot of fun. You actually do nothing because as coaches, these are the final debates. As coaches, typically you're not allowed to be there during the debate because you can maybe cheat or stuff like that, and they're really serious about that. Like kids come in and like they empty their pockets and they put phones on and they're like, okay, look, I'm ready to go, right? But it's a lot of fun, and they speak really fast and they get really intense, and sometimes they cry and it's really sad. But it's a really good event, and this is where they get it. And it's just role playing, it's acting. You really got to get them into that idea of it's a battle, right? Whether or not you're going to be loud, or whether or not you're going to have great arguments, or whether or not you're going to speak faster, you're going to memorize all that type of stuff. And then there's all these points of engagements like POIs and rebuttals, and that's really where you're going to like stick it to your team, the opposing team, in any way possible. Okay. All right. But yeah, if you do it, it's a lot of fun. This was a special event in here for this one. We actually did everything on Zoom, and then we had the finals up on the stage at the COEX building, okay? Usually we have them in winter term and summer term, just so you know. So if you want to join, or if you have a team, or you're teaching one of those master levels that are, what's it called? The master levels, yeah, for the D program. Talk to your BM, talk to your FM, and maybe we'll see you there. It's a lot of fun, okay? Here, moving around. Oops. Okay. So when you do, whether or not it is reading, whether or not it's lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, okay, it's really important to give constructive feedback to your students. Hopefully during your C2 projects or your V1 projects, or even the writing, you're already giving students feedback. However, if you don't know, that's cool. For the Asian Parliament style debates, these are the 3 categories that students are typically graded on or judged on. The 3 categories are called matter, method, and manner. Okay. Typically, just so you know, a little secret, but there is a scoring range. But for the scoring range, just like our achievement test, you have to stick within a level. So like no way a student can ever get 0, just so you know, there's like a range in there. So you always get 40 or 50 or something like that, just so you know. Okay, so here, matter, this is just basically the content of the argument. Are they logical? Do they have good feedback, good statistics? Does it logically support whatever their arguments are? And as a team, are they really doing it cohesively? Or are they contradicting each other? Are they doing anything of that nature, right? Like, so speaker 1 had an argument, but that contradicted, all right, the second argument that they also gave. So basically the cohesiveness, the quality of their analysis, the examples they give, okay? There's also things called like stakeholders, whether or not they're really identifying those people and so forth, okay? Method is just structure, timing, and technical presentation. So basically, this is making sure that they understand the formal language, that they're following the rules in a sense, okay? Do they continue to build on each other, and are they just following the basic structure, okay? For time management, just so you know, speakers are usually given about 6 constructive speakers. So the first 3 roles are 6 minutes, but that doesn't really matter, honestly, especially for lower levels and your time management. I typically will do 4 minutes per speaker. And honestly, they won't even get it for the debate. They'll probably get to like 2 or 3 minutes, okay? But those students that are a little bit more advanced, they'll want to do a rebuttal and their argument, and it takes a little bit of time. So 4 minutes, I think, is usually a good number to go by. And they'll probably only reach about 3 minutes, okay? All right. The presentation or manner, this is like style. This is like, you know, rhetorical devices. This is your body language. This is any humor, right? This is getting the audience to laugh, right? So sometimes I tell them like, oh, if we laugh or if people enjoy, right? So especially during my projects and presentations, like I'll ask for feedback from my students. I say, oh, did you guys really enjoy Rebecca's part, right? And everyone will be like, yeah. I'm like, what'd you like about Rebecca? Oh, she was really funny. Like we were all laughing at her jokes when she acted and she fell on the ground like she was dying, blah, 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 right? Same idea for a debate. The style and do they persuade you pretty much like this is so important, like you've got to do this, stuff like that, okay? So this will be the type of feedback you could give. I wouldn't say you have to do it this way. You can also look it up on the internet, just AP debate, adjudicator, or judging formats, right? And here there's matter, method, and manner. I don't think you need to go and do it like specifically with the numbers and stuff unless you're actually going to be judging, okay? However, they do also provide you with, where is it? They provide you with this criteria. I don't really like this criteria because number one, the students don't really understand it that much, like the breadth, the depth, the linguistic, the non-linguistic, right? So you don't necessarily have to use these 3, but you can make your own, right? So I always do that, like, oh, were they humorous? Were they funny? One thing I always have is, did they use any of the vocabulary? I always tell them to use some of the vocabulary words or some of the phrases or idioms that we learn, okay? So that'll be that, okay? All right, almost there. Then, okay, remember again, the discover page for the next lesson, right? So at the end of the lesson, again, you have, okay, the homework for homework complete 2 and 3 for the next lesson. And again, this is the same video, okay? This is the same video. They're going to do it, all right? So just remember that. Again, you can decide or talk to your FM how you think would be the best way. But again, this is the video that they're going to do for homework. And then you're going to see again on lesson 2 or lesson 3, the lesson ahead, and then gets broken down for all the perspectives. So just keep that in mind. These videos are watched quite a bit. So it is important to also include other media and videos for your preparation when you're doing the perspectives and stuff, okay? All right. Other than that, that is about it. Just remember, right? Reinforce the skills. Remember the objective, right? Have explain the writings and persuasive speaking, right? But overall, have fun. Let the students really get into it, right? The more you're into it, the more they'll get into it. Just so you know, you can also, like when I said roles, they don't necessarily have to be real people, right? So for example, I have debates where I had like Team Loki and Team Thor, right? You know, Thor and Loki, right? And they had debates in that sense. Maybe there's other characters that they enjoy or they like. I don't know where I know they like, some people like Pororo, and maybe they're too old for that. Pororo and Lupi, Team Pororo, Team Lupi. It's also fun for them to make a team name. It is something that you always do for the debate competition. So not only roles, but also a debate name. It's just a fun way to have it always. And if they come up with some funny ones, it's always fun to say their names and stuff like that. Okay. Other than that, I know it's a lot of information, but if you guys have any questions, or if there's any information or like some files or something that you think you don't have access to, you can email me, cdlmokdong@gmail.com, and just let me know, like, hey, I was in the C2 debate. Can you send me those rhetorical devices? Or, hey, I don't got the SIG guide or something. But you should have the SIG guide or the SEG guide. You can let me know, okay? Other than that, any questions? If not, I forgot to do this last time.